Hello and welcome back to another Satisfactory video. I'm Malt and today we're doing a deep dive on the Dimensional Depot. The Dimensional Depot was introduced into Satisfactory in the 1.0 release just after early access, but even though it's been around a while, I still think it's one of the biggest gameplay changing features since early access ended. And I wanted to do a little bit of a dive into exactly how to unlock, set up, make the most of the Dimensional Depot as you play through the game. First up, what is this thing? Basically, it's a pocket dimension that stores stacks of items and allows you to build and craft as if those items were already in your inventory. So it's like always having those items with you, and you can automatically refill them by running items automatically into this Dimensional Depot uploader building. Now, to unlock this, the first thing you're going to need is some Mercer spheres. Now, I've already unlocked everything, but we'll walk you through the process anyway. So you can find Mercer spheres all over the place. But you're also going to need a few other items like SAM fluctuators, which require steel pipes and the SAM material itself. Now you can find steel pipes around crash sites, so technically you can unlock this pretty early, even before you've got a space elevator, if you get lucky and find all these things. But if you don't, you'll be able to unlock this in Phase 2 pretty easily. To unlock this, the first thing you're going to want to do is look in the MAM at your alien technology tree. The first node here is just the Mercer sphere analysis, which gives you the ability to scan for Mercer spheres with your object scanner. And this is going to be really useful for finding all of these things. The second one is the Dimensional Depot uploader building itself, and that requires one more sphere and 11 SAM fluctuators, which you'll have to craft. After that, you have a lot more, but we'll get into that in a second. Let's look at the Dimensional Depot. You can drop items into it, and mine's fully upgraded, so it's moving pretty fast. But when you first start this thing, it's not so fast. And it takes a little while for you to upload. Now, once you've built the Dimensional Depot, you can go into your inventory, and you'll find that you have this Dimensional Depot window open. And you'll see all of the items that you've been able to load up so far, and how many you have, and how many the maximum you can have. So because I've got it fully upgraded, I can store 5 stacks of each of these items. But when you start, you'll only be able to do 1. And you're only uploading items, I believe it's at 30 items per minute. It's very slow. Once you get this, one of the first things you should do is check this box, the Take from Inventory Before Depot box. Now, what this does is, instead of pulling directly from the Dimensional Depot whenever you build something, it will first use items that you have in your inventory. And that's a good thing. If you don't do this, then as you build and dismantle, as you pull items from the depot, then dismantle, they'll appear in your inventory, and eventually you'll fill up your inventory and be stuck. So I recommend turning this on. The next thing you can do is search. So if you want to find a specific type of item, you can type in the name and find all the items that you have from there. You can shift-click to immediately put one stack of those items into your inventory, or you can drag them. And once you've got it unlocked, you can even upload items from your personal inventory into the Dimensional Depot. You can also pin items that you're going to need to use frequently, like I like summer sloops, any collectibles, and ammo. I don't have any ammo on me, but we'll pin the rifle. Anything that you want to have show up here, you can plop up here. I like to have Nobelisks right at the top. Just pull some when I run out. As I said, this starts out pretty slow, with very few items and only 1 stack. So the Dimensional Depot has a lot of different upgrades. On the left-hand side, you've got depot expansion upgrades, which increase the number of stacks up to 5. And on the right, you've got the upload upgrade, which increases the speed. So starting, I guess it starts at 15. I was wrong. And then the manual depot uploader allows you to drop items directly from your inventory into those 5 extra slots at the bottom and have them upload into the depot as you go. One thing about the personal, you can drop that. You don't have to leave your inventory open. If you go back, so you can just slap those in there and move on, and they'll eventually upload. Now, how you choose to upgrade is really up to you. I start with the personal inventory upload. You're going to have to go find some computers unless you want to wait until, I think, Phase 3, when you unlock the manufacturer and can automate those or build those. You can actually unlock this pretty early in the game if you just go to crash sites and find some computers. As for the rest of these, it'll probably take you until you at least have automated steel and a SAM node. In total, there are 298 spheres in the map that you can find. You're going to need one to unlock just the basic analysis, and then another to unlock the depot itself. You'll need 3 for each of these first level upgrades, and then 7 for this, 13 for these, and 23 for the last level of upgrades, plus a lot of SAM fluctuators. But the real limit here are the Mercer spheres, and once they're spent, they're gone. That means you've got 97 spheres that you're going to have to spend for fully upgrade. And that leaves 201 spheres for you to play around with and build dimensional depots. It's a good bit. But earlier in the game, you're not going to want to spend all of your spheres directly on upgrading the depot. You're going to want to reserve some for building some dimensional uploaders. That way you can actually make use of this before you get to the end of the game. Finding Mercer spheres is pretty easy. There are a lot of them lying around, but they can be hidden in tricky places and often guarded by creatures. So the best way to find them in-game is to use the object scanner, select Mercer sphere, and then wait for something to pop up. I lucked out, and I've got something pretty close nearby. I'm going to fly my way up here since I'm in this creative mode, and I see that as I get closer, my meter builds up, and aha, now I have this. But it's guarded, so first let me get rid of these guys. Now, once you've dispatched whatever guards or dangers there are around there, you can just hold down E and collect your Mercer sphere. Congratulations. To find all of the spheres, I find it's very useful to use the Satisfactory interactive map on the Satisfactory calculator website, which I'll put a link in below. You can upload a save game, and it will show you the locations of literally everything that you have in your game. So you can select the Mercer spheres and see exactly which ones are still remaining on the map. Now, I have gone and collected, at least in one game, every Mercer sphere on the map, so I guarantee they do exist. Occasionally the scanner will glitch. I notice this a lot when I'm playing on multiplayer on not my machine, but if it shows up on the map, in the Satisfactory calculator map, then it exists in your game. So if you're having trouble finding it, it's probably underground and in a cave. So with 298 spheres, 97 that you're going to use for upgrading, there's still 201 spheres left, but you're not going to get to all of those at once. As you play, you'll probably only have some small fraction of that to begin with. Obviously, upgrades cost a lot, and it's a permanent cost. My plan for upgrading usually is once I get the dimensional depot itself is to go for this first level stack increase, the speed upgrade, and the manual depot uploader. And then I alternate stack, speed, stack, speed. Now the last question is what to do with the spheres that you do have. So I'm going to put together a tier list and share my thoughts on exactly which items I think you should use at what times in the game, and how to prioritize those. So if you only have a few spheres, you'll know exactly what to put where. So I set up a tier list. And I'm going to go through each phase of the game and list items that you can automate during that phase of the game. Then I'm going to set where those should be in the tier list. And I want to emphasize that this is not how good that item is or whether or not you should use that item. So if it's an ammo, it's just whether or not automating that is worth it if you're going to use those items. Let's start with phase 0. The first thing that I usually put in a dimensional depot uploader is concrete. It's used for foundations and a lot of buildings, and you use a lot of it. The next thing is, for the same reason, iron plates. Iron plates are really nice for foundations. When you first unlock them, you need concrete and iron, but they're also good for belts, and you build a lot of those. Iron rods is another thing I like to prioritize, mostly for exploration early in the game because you can build ladders with them. And that, with the combination of foundations, will let you get around pretty easily and start actually collecting more spheres and slugs and things you might want in the beginning. Reinforced plates, those are going to be for your Mark II belts. I put those pretty high as well. So a lot of the stuff in the phase 0 is high, but not everything. Screws are not very useful. You only really need them to build one building, the awesome shop. So I put those as a D tier. Next up would be quick wire. And quick wire I think is useful. It's used in several buildings, mostly in the higher level power poles. That's the first thing that comes to mind. So that will put it at an A tier for me. So silica I kind of want to prioritize, but it's not the most important thing because the main usage I see is for building windows. That to me is not that important. You can prioritize it for later, and in the mid to late game when you want to do some nice looking architecture, it's nice to have, but for playing through the game and actually getting to those stages, it's not that useful. The crystals, again, those are useful for building signs, but not much else. So I put those in B tier. They're not something I would really rush to get in. Wire is used in a lot of buildings, especially early on, but not so much for anything else, so I would put that as an A tier. The first ammunition you can really automate are the rebar, and I think automating ammunition and putting that in a depot is pretty important, but not as important as building. So I put that as a B tier. Finally, for our first phase, you have cable. And cable is used for power lines, so that's a easy S tier for me. Let's move on to phase 1. Alright, so phase 1. I don't have a lot listed on phase 1 because there's just not a lot that you can automate in this phase that would be useful to put in the depot. The first step though is copper sheets. Copper sheets are used for pipes. And you want to build a lot of pipes, you're going to need those. Next is rotors. Rotors are used in a few buildings. So I will put them in as an A tier. Similarly, modular frames. Modular frames are used in a lot of buildings, especially in the mid tier. So I give them an A as well. Biofuel. Solid biofuel, I rank a lot higher than this. And my main reason is so I can use a chainsaw whenever I want. Finally, the AI limiter you can get automated in this phase, but I put it alongside things like silica, the quartz, because really the thing that comes to mind is the smart splitter. I don't tend to build a lot of those really early on. Let's move on to phase 2. Now this is another one that's a little bit lacking in items. The big ones though here is steel production. The steel beams, belts, lots of buildings. Similarly, the steel pipes. Those are really useful, and I think they're A tier. These are things that I always want to get in. Stators, on the other hand, really fall down. If we go look into buildings, you'll find that not much uses a stator. So I would automate those. I might even say, let's go down to C level for stators. I just don't need them for anything but making motors, and well, if I can automate motors, then great. Speaking of which, I'd put motors as another A tier. Now you use them for a lot of buildings, trains, and refineries, and so those are nice to have as well. The last two things in this tier that you can now unlock with the assembler is, well, and steel pipes for this, is explosives. And like I said, I like ammo, and this is really the first one that you get from the explosives. So I like to have those. You never know when you run across a rock you want to blow up and just don't have anything on you. Finally is the automated miner, which a lot of people are down on the automated miner. I can see why it's not all that useful, but once you have this recipe and you can automate it, and if you have the free Mercer spheres, this is actually pretty useful for not having to think about carrying these. Also, very late in the game, if you're building a lot of drones, you want some of these. But again, I think it's a C tier, and it's not so much something you want to just really rush to spend your Mercer spheres on. Alright, let's move to phase 3. Phase 3 is a big one, mostly because you both unlock oil and the manufacturer in phase 3. So the first thing is plastic. Plastic is used for my favorite, the coated concrete foundations. But it's not used for as many other buildings, so I give it an A tier. Rubber is used for some buildings, but not the ones you'd use very frequently, and I put it in a B tier. The polymer, my first F tier. Don't put this. You can't use it to craft anything, so there's no real reason to have it hanging around. I would say this is a never item. My first never item. Once you have oil production, you can start making circuit boards. I give it a B tier. Heavy modular frames, I'll also give a B tier. They're used for some buildings, but not a lot. Rifle ammunition, you're gonna guess. Yeah, I like to put this up front. Which way is my arrow? I love this arrow, by the way. 1.1. So Obviously, ammunition is as good, but not as good as some other things. So I put that up in A tier. Cluster Nobelisk, I'm calling out because I like it a lot, and I think it's a really useful item. I'm not going to call out any of the other variants of ammos, just this one. Fuel, again, fuel is something that it's nice to have when you need it. You don't always have to have it carried around with you, but having some in the depot at whatever level you're making that fuel, so if it's rocket fuel, whatever, that's nice to have. And I tend to prioritize it, just especially when I'm building. Computers are used in quite a few buildings, but you don't usually need a ton of them, so I put that in a B tier. Crystal oscillators are, again, only used in a few things. I put them B tier as well. Filters, I'm going to put down in the C tier, mostly because everything that you can use filters for are either avoidable or explodable. But it still may be useful to have them if you want to, quickly run through some area. So high-speed connectors are used in some things. A few of the higher level wall outlets. SAM fluctuators. As much as I like having SAM fluctuators automated, I really feel like they're C tier. The only real thing that you're going to use to build with them is more dimensional depots, which is pretty great, but not something that you really have to automate, because until you have the need for a ton of Mercer spheres, you don't have the need for a ton of fluctuators. So, Cloth. The only thing that you can build with cloth that I think would be worth automating is already on the list, so this goes in my never category. Don't put this in automatically. So that's our big one. I think phase 3 is the largest. So let's move on to phase 4. So in phase 4 we have a lot of new items that are really difficult to craft. They require a lot of materials. But there's not very many that I say are really high level. Now the first one, anything for belts, to me gets an A tier. Or an S tier, excuse me. You want belts. You need belts. And I'm realizing I'm missing a belt. We'll go ahead and put this in. Pardon me. Another thing for belts. Encased beams. So encased beams come with advanced steel production, so it's technically phase 2. And I had it missing. So now it's there. Now you see it. I messed up. You happy? Yeah, that's fine. So nothing else on here that I would go for strongly for S tier. So let's look at everything else. These guys, I can see having a few of them if you want to be able to make nuclear pasta on the fly somewhere. But it's not very useful in the same way that nuclear pasta is also not very useful to have lying around. It's a space elevator part basically, but it is useful for some crafting recipes if you really needed to use it. It might be okay to have, but I wouldn't waste a sphere on it unless you're just rolling in them. The cooling units, those are used for several buildings, so they get a B tier. Same with supercomputers. Heat sinks, on the other hand, almost nothing uses a heatsink, so it goes down here. Copper powder, again, the only thing you use it for is building nuclear pasta, so you could just automate the nuclear pasta. There's no reason to automate that. These guys, a lot of these materials are just B tier. They are used for building some buildings, but they're not used in large quantities, so you don't need to really prioritize them. You could just have a stack, or you could manually upload them. So automating them isn't a high priority for me. Not surprisingly, the radiation filters go alongside the filters. You can mostly avoid radiation, although I would put them an edge above the regular filters. It's nice to have them if you're building nuclear. And finally, aluminum casings, I put in as C. Again, they're useful for a few things, but not a lot of buildings, so I put them here. Alright, our last phase, and there's only a few items here. Let's start with this guy. There's literally only one building that you build with this, and unless you plan on covering your entire map with Mark III blueprint designers, there's no reason to ever automate this guy. The only other recipe it's used for is the space elevator part, so you don't really need it. The quantum oscillators are used for a couple of buildings, but not things that I build frequently, so I'll put them up at a C tier. Time crystals, on the other hand, S tier for sure. And actually, as soon as I unlock these, the first thing I get is a factory making these that has a dimensional depot attached to it, because I want to move into those Mark VI belts and start building them super quick. Same with the Trigons. Exactly the same deal. Diamonds, well, again, the only thing you can make with diamonds is time crystals, so why do you need them? You don't. So let's not do that. So the singularity cell I would build only as a last resort, and maybe I could use it to put a portal up in the middle of nowhere if I wanted to get somewhere fast. But again, it's not super useful, not really worth spending a lot of effort on. And then finally, the last one I would say is power shards. Now, I debated on power shards. Should it go S or should it go A? But I think I finally landed with A, because you can make so many with slugs once you unlock the summer sloops that you don't really need to automate them. So automating them just means you're going to have even more lying around. So unfortunately, it did not get to be S tier for me. But it is still really useful to have them in the depot. So there you go. Here is my tier list for things that you want to prioritize in your dimensional depot as you play through the game. So just as an overview, my basic guidelines here were thinking about infrastructure, belts, pipes, power cables, foundations, everything that you need for any factory you're going to build. The next thing I would look at is consumables and very common factory building supplies, things that you use a lot of. Ammo ranks pretty high on that just because I like to explore and I don't like critters killing me. I like to have some ammo and some things to blow things up. Once I've got that covered, then it's the convenience builds, things that I'm going to use to build a lot of things, but don't necessarily have to have. And that's my B tier. So things like windows, those go in that. Or things that I'm building fairly infrequently. The rest of these are just kind of conveniences, things that I would put in. There are things that I absolutely would never automate. Ore, coal, sulfur, things like that. Ingots of any kind. There's no good reason to automate those, but you could dump them in manually or early on in the game, because sometimes when you're exploring, you may find that you need an item to open up a crash site that you just don't have. For instance, my friend was trying to open up a crash site and needed black powder. So I dumped some sulfur and some coal so he could craft black powder. I could have put the black powder in, but why do you need black powder in the dimensional depot? It's sort of an intermediate ingredient. But if you're not really sure what you're going to run into, having some base materials sitting in that you manually uploaded or just have a dedicated uploader building to toss some stuff into is maybe okay. So that's about it. That's everything that I really wanted to talk about for dimensional depots. There's a lot there, especially with the tier list. If I missed anything, fill me in the comments. Give me your suggestions. If you think any of these are in the wrong place and why, let me know. I'd love to hear what you think. If you found this helpful, just upload yourself to my subscription depot and then you can like this video from anywhere. And as always, thank you for watching. Bye.